What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Patio Slave podcast. The year is 2022. The podcast is Patio Slave. The episode is 95. Gentlemen, what is going on?
Back at it. New year, fresh nerdery, and a fresh website thanks to Twan. He's been working diligently behind the scenes to put together a comprehensive nerd website. Makes us look super badass. So thanks to Twan. It's kind of like a nerdery Christmas present for me. So doing well, man. How are you guys?
I'm great, man. Twan, we really appreciate you. When we talk about nerdery here, we talk about us being nerds. Twan really is a nerd. Like he went on and like went behind under the hood on the website and like was changing things that I have no clue what he's talking about. I'm like, sweet, man, it looks awesome. So shouts to Twan for doing all that legwork because the website's great. So go check it out, patioslave.com. New and improved, plenty of things to nerd out about there. Check our interviews. There's a tab for About Us. There's a tab for our press. There's all kinds of cool stuff. There's a way to contact us. I mean, hit it up, man. There's plenty of cool things there.
Full disclosure, very template driven. There is some, HTML wizardry behind the scenes, but it's pretty much template driven. So,
you're not a nerd. Is that what you're saying?
I'm an imposter. Yeah. I'm an imposter nerd. Just like music nerd, I'm an imposter.
Oh no!
I exposed myself with the Kings of Leon. I thought they were from the UK, didn't I?
That's true.
And our listenership fucking declined significantly when No, it's done well. In fact, it's done really well this past week. What happened this week? We had Brian Fair, Shadows Fall, Overcast, 90s OG, as Nate says.
Yep.
And the episode is crushed. People love it. The feedback's great. We had a fucking blast, and that's really the most important thing. I mean, we were laughing like school kids the whole time.
Yeah, and the timing was perfect because it was kind of like a hometown show. Like, got our OG Brian Fair from Shadows Fall, Massachusetts band on to kind of, close the year with us on the podcast. So that was, super cool. And especially, I mean, what was it, like 2 or 3 episodes before, talking about the show that I worked in Portland, the small, I guess, known as the Ceiling Show, according to Brian. So it all came full circle. So it was a great way to close out the year. I really like it.
The lesson here is put it out there, and maybe things will happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also be good at it. I mean, there's some of that too. No, I'm just kidding. We've been super blessed to talk to a bunch of different people, and we're excited for the start of a new year and to hopefully have more of that stuff, right? I mean, we're going to keep grinding. We're going to keep trying to get guests on and talk about the stuff that we know and love over the years here. So welcome to 2022, Patio Slave, bigger and better. Here we come.
And you know what? If you're back because last week was your first episode, thank you so much. I mean, we don't get a killer interview like Brian every week or interviews in general every week. There's a lot of original content, a lot of OG content, music commentary, us just riffing. But we do even interviews, I'd say probably every third episode.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we get some big things under the hood that we're cooking up here for 2022.
Yeah. And couple weeks from now, this is dropping January 3rd. So January 18th, hopefully, I don't know. But later in January, you're going to see, I guested on Playlist Wars. So we had Brian on way back, episode 84, I think. And they returned the favor. And I went on and talked Green Day with them. So really fun concept, really fun format. Those guys kick ass, Brian and Gomez. So if you want to listen to me, but in a different way, do that. And they want to have you guys on too. They did mention that to me pre and post. They're excited to have all 3 of us on at some point. So look for that in the near future.
Hey, we're here for it. I know I am.
Very cool.
I think we're pretty versatile that we can really talk about pretty much anything. But although Green Day would have been fun, but fucking hard. So I haven't listened to the episode. So I don't know, where you landed with it, but I'm curious. I'll vote for you.
Yes, we gotta take the first ever Playlist Wars / Patio Slave battle down, right? I mean, Go vote for Tony if you're listening to this in a couple of weeks.
You're gaming the system. No, you were sending us some things in the group text, and I was like, man, it's like you're cramming for a big final. Like, man, I feel for you. It's a tough decision to kind of round it down to a few songs.
And those guys do it every week. So imagine trying to do that every week. Like, pick a
stress.
Yeah, and then like you're not sure if you're coming or going. The way we do it, sometimes we've had a couple of episodes to record in the same week, and it's like, are we doing Green Day right now, or are we doing another band? Like, I don't even know. And then you're mixing up. Anything can happen. So that's not easy. And you're right, Nate. It felt like a test, but I think I passed.
Nice. And nerd stress really isn't that stressful at the end of the day. Like life problems are pretty substantial, and then nerd problems are like, fuck, I got to cram for the Green Day test. Not a big deal.
So if you're listening, flood the box, flood the ballot box, support the scan. Tony, Playlist Wars podcast, Audio Slave 1, Playlist War 0. Now we're all friends. We're hoping.
A couple of weeks from now, we'll find out.
All right, gentlemen. I think that that concludes the little roundup here. So we're going to get into something a little special, right? Kick off 2022. Tony, you came up with an idea for this episode, which is what?
We're going to most anticipated, most looked forward to kind of semi-predictions here and there too. Things that we're going to see in 2022 in the music industry, whether it be albums that are going to be released or, what might happen to the concert world. Who knows? Any of that stuff. So we each have a couple things to talk about. We might have me do an album, and then Twan has a prediction about live music, and Nate has a conspiracy theory. You never know with us. It could be any of that stuff.
Wow, you know us really well.
Yeah, 95 of these and 25 years on top of that. Yeah, but they could be anything. So we'll get into it now. I don't know who wants to lead off. If we want to lead off with an album, we want to lead off with a conspiracy theory. I don't know. What do we want to do?
All right, I'm jumping in. I'm jumping in head first. I'm going to set this episode on fire here. I think in 2022. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how it's going to come together. I don't know if there's going to be action taken or just a narrative, but I feel like there's going to be a Wall Street Bets-esque music industry revolt/disruption. So a little context, Wall Street Bets was the subreddit that got a lot of attention this year when they kind of banded together and took down all the institutional investors, and they burned all the short sellers and took all the stocks to the moon. I think with this climate where touring is up in the air, the Spotifys of the world, they're taking all the money. I think from the creative perspective, so the artist perspective, there's going to be some uprising, whether it's banding together in a union type of way and just pulling stuff off the big platforms and pursuing NFTs or anything where they can take the power back. I haven't fully thought it through. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think you're going to see that it will be a narrative, whether it's action taken or just chatter. It's already started, own your masters. We're putting out NFTs. We're getting that bag. But I think this is the year where, like the Daniel X of the world, like they're too rich. The creatives are going to take it back. What do we think, gentlemen?
I like it. And actually somewhat crossed my mind, as you mentioned, didn't quite have a moment to really get it down on paper with where I stand personally. And I think it's a pretty complicated matter, right? Because you're looking at contracts, you're looking at album deals. They might be on their third cycle out of a 6-album contract. Like it's hard to just jump ship, and you're looking at, legal paperwork to exit. So there's a lot of variables at play here, but I understand where you're going. I definitely see where you're seeing the breadcrumbs lead to this kind of conclusion. And if there's any time for it to go down, it would be 2022, because we're looking at not the tail end of the pandemic, but definitely a different phase. And after kind of a 2-year shutdown with lost revenues and sitting around and waiting for the man, this whole industry has blossomed into a new direction, which is very much personalized, like you said, owning your own masters or putting out NFTs or a lot of direct to consumer type commerce, whether it be merchandise or, just music in general. So I can kind of see where you're at with this. I think I agree. I think I need to think on it more, but I think I understand where your head's.
Hearing both of you talk just now, what you're saying, Twan, is going to happen in some form or fashion. I think the nice piece here is that it's your independent artists that can maybe band together.
Yes.
Whereas Nate was saying your mid-major to major artists that are signed to deals with, whether it be, big labels or your Spotify's or your Apple Musics of the world, that might be a little bit more difficult for them to get out of that stuff until it's over. And they may not want things to change because they're the ones being put on all the playlists. They're the ones front and center on all the streaming services and they're making money hand over fist that way. But those indie records, indie artists are having a tougher time with that because it's hard for them to get seen sometimes, similar to us as podcasts. It's hard for you to get seen in a world where you're not being pumped up by the big dog. So there needs to be something to change that, because there's a lot of good stuff out there that's not seen. And it should be. I mean, hell, we've talked to artists that didn't get their due over the course of the time that we've had this going. So I think you're right. I think we'll see something like that, where the little guy kind of shakes their fist together at the big guy, and the big guy says, okay, we got to change something because this isn't tenable.
I agree. And not like in that Wall Street Bets example, like someone like Drake, he's in bed with the institutional investors in that scenario. So yeah, they want to ride that wave. They don't want anything to change. But I think that you're right. It's the independent guys that just getting squeezed. I think it was Toby McAllister, one of our previous guests. He was like, every 250 spins gets me $1. And it's like, well, goddamn, you gotta get a lot of spins to make a living that way. And I know that's not the only revenue stream. You know, he plays out live and he's got merch and stuff, and that's just one, DSP, but damn, it's an uphill battle.
And he it's funny you mentioned him, because I was thinking of him for a different reason. He had tweeted something out asking how somebody gets on a playlist. Like, who do I have to yell at or email it nicely, put me on this playlist? Like, I fit here, because he's smaller indie by himself right now. That's hard to do. So, the thing that I'm seeing more and more, if you're following an indie artist, you like an indie artist, go follow them on whatever DSP you use, just to kind of help them out a little bit. And then buy their merch, see them live when you can. When that stuff does happen, you should definitely do it. So I think that's the way to help those folks so they don't go away. And that class has certainly shrunk during the pandemic. We don't want to lose more of them. So, put some money towards them. Taylor Swift will be okay tomorrow. Drake will be okay tomorrow. Kanye will be okay tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, with that said, there's also another element to that too, right? So you're talking about physical goods or any kind of way to support the band on a tangible end good. Well, that's also being squeezed, right? We had talked about it a little bit a few episodes ago on someone like Adele that's squeezing out vinyl press in favor of her newest release, whereas legacy artists, whether it's independent or major label artists, are kind of getting, I don't know, pushed aside. Their lead times are getting extended in favor of arguably one of the biggest artists of all time, which is Adele. So even supporting the artist in the traditional sense is, kind of in arms right now with the whole supply chain. So it gets really complicated really easily.
Well, and in that situation, I want those indie labels, your Pure Noises and whatever, to be like, hey, we need to band together, because this can't happen. I know it's Christmas.
Totally.
I know we need to press 1 million Adele records. I didn't get one for Christmas. I'm bummed. No, I'm just kidding. I would rather have had 15 different smaller artists that I like be able to press stuff for the next 6 months than all of those Adele records that are undoubtedly still sitting at Walmart. So that can't happen again. That's not, even if projections are big, have it be a little scarce. They'll be able to do another run at some point. Like, we're not reinventing the wheel with Adele here, but for some of those other smaller indie record labels, indie artists, that's tough, man. Like, their livelihood is me, Nate, Anthony buying their merch, their pre-orders when they go live. And if their pre-order goes live in November for a record in June, and they may not get it, that's not good. That's bad for the music industry as a whole.
And what they could do, and what they should do, is they, on the supply side, control the supply, and then they'll increase demand. So then you have two runs, rather than 500,000 out of the gate, do a first press of 250, 200, and then there's a demand for that. And then there's a second press. But I don't know. What I'd love to hear is, like, from listeners, I'd love to hear, like, what ways you think this could be realized, whether it's hashtag fuck Spotify or anything like that, where there's just a banding together to kind of destroy the big guy. We've talked about a few ways, but I'd love to hear from the listeners. So that's my first one. Hopefully that's a bang.
That's a good one.
Could be a fizzle out of who knows.
No, it's a bang.
That. All right, I'm gonna throw an album at us. Let's see an album that's coming out this year that we probably are all, or maybe coming out this year, that we're all kind of excited about. Could there be new Slipknot? They've been working on it, right?
I think Corey confirmed it.
Okay, yeah, and I thought that there was some legitimate buzz around that, like maybe even a month and a half ago. So I'm hoping we see that before the summer, so that maybe we can see them on tour this summer, because that's going to be probably the safest way to do that right now, is have them outside at a big venue, not fest style, go around the country and play amphitheaters and do that stuff. So new Slipknot, that's the most anticipated, most exciting thing for me coming up here in 2021. I'm ready for that.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, especially because they dropped the album. I guess, was it in the middle of the pandemic?
No, it was
before.
fall of 19. I thought the same thing.
19.
Then
Okay.
It came out in August of 19, I think, right? We Are Not Your Kind.
Yes, exactly. But I'm thinking more of the promotional aspect of, making that album come to full circle. So obviously that includes touring, which was put on halt during the pandemic, at least in 2020. They returned in 2021 here. I know they played a show in LA that I was trying to get to, kind of select small shows. I think it was called the Not Fest Roadshow. So I guess they utilized the downtime to straight up write a whole new album, which is, I'd love to get their take on that. Like, they barely got to promote the last cycle. And hey, might as well, we have all these ideas. I guess we'll just put out another album. So there's only so many bands that can do that. And Slipknot's definitely one of them.
I would love to get their take on that too. Corey, the DMs are open.
Oh, for sure.
Hey, and we've interviewed and talked to people that know him. So if those folks are listening, let's make this happen.
Yeah.
I actually saw today, I think Corey was on some media outlet, or I don't know where it was, but he said basically the plan is in the spring, new Slipknot album.
Nice.
Because they released that song Chapeltown Rag, which to me was a throwback. It reminded me of almost self-titled era.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it had heavy on DJ elements and, was heavy and had melody. I mean, that's their playbook. And it was a throwback. And I feel like reading online, that's the kind of vibe that people got, was more self-titled than, I don't know, Subliminal Verses, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I'm
sure.
here for that.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, timing wise, perfect too. And we're looking at, I guess, 22 years back in terms of retrospective for Slipknot. 23, I guess, if you say 99. So yeah, I mean, for them to capitalize on that is proper. Go back to your roots, capture the nostalgia 23 years ago, and you got your old fans and you got your new fans. Because I think anyone can appreciate some heavy music right now. At least I can. So
Yeah, totally. And you're right. I mean, the nostalgia play is big across all music at the moment.
Huge.
And all things, not even just music. I mean, we just got a new Matrix movie. We just, there's all kinds of stuff out there that another Spider-Man with 3 of the people playing Spider-Man. Like, it's just nostalgia everywhere. So I guess that's our generation eating that stuff up. But here we are.
Yeah.
Give us another Slipknot that sounds like something from 25 years ago.
But I mean, they are universal. I mean, we go back to last week. I mean, they took out some heavy ass bands, and you heard it from Brian. He said they were still playing some brutal stuff during the Subliminal Verses day. So if you're from that crowd or you're more on the new metal side, there's something there for you. And I think I don't know. I saw them on the Knotfest show in 2019, the Knotfest Road Show in Massachusetts. They were great. They were awesome. They still bring it, and I would go back. I'd go back this year.
Yeah.
Nate, my man, hit us with it. What you got?
Man, well, it's funny because I got, a bunch of things lined up here, and they both kind of play into both of what you're saying. But I'm going to resort to this first one, kind of springboarding on what you just said, and it's touring. For 2022, I think touring is going to make a comeback. Here's my timeline. So you're looking at 2020 shut down, nothing's happening. Show production and touring is essentially at a halt. We all saw that as fans. Internally, tours being canceled, rerouted for 2021. That was even kind of a shakeup. So I'm looking at springtime as a beta for 2021, as there were some soft shows. I saw a few shows spring into summer and even into this fall, but pretty scarce for the most part. I mean, I was able to see everything I wanted to see just for the lack of shows in general and tours in general, whether things were rerouted for 2022, let alone 2021. So there's a lot of that going on. So I see it as like the beta phase, soft opening, as you will, for the touring industry to make a return. So I feel like 2022 in particular, late spring going into summer is really when we're going to see things kind of return to form. And I'm taking a lot of clues based on festival lineups, a lot of Instagram notes on, new albums, promotion, kind of all correlating to that same time frame, which is late spring, early summer. And I think it has a lot to do with what we're looking at on the pandemic, right? We're looking at a whole new wave here. So winter is essentially maybe not another shutdown, but definitely a pause on big tours. And everyone knows that summer's the time to see shows anyway, especially outdoors. So I think we're looking at just a soft phase opening for the live music scene, and it's played out primarily in a not half capacity, but just lack of shows in general. So I'd say my kind of foresight on what we're seeing in 2022 is a return to normal or return to form come, Q2 into Q3 of 2022.
I actually have kind of an opposite thought. I think we're probably headed in the opposite direction, and it kind of feeds into my next thing I'm anticipating or prediction, which I'll hold off for now. But I think I'm just seeing the writing on the wall right now. Everything's getting canceled, and it could be this wave. Everyone's indoors. It's winter. New strain, new variant, etc. But who's to say this is the last one? Are we going to do this all over again? Who knows? I feel like we're leaning more towards that direction of cancellations and apprehension than diving in to say, hey, we have every reason to think this year will be better than the last. Actually, that's an indirect tease to the point I'm going to make here in a few minutes. But I don't know. My gut and impulse tells me it's going to be a light summer.
I think I agree with Nate.
Think so?
Yeah, I think summer's going to people are going to go hard. The only thing that worries me is that we've had, especially some of the bigger acts, push music, right? I mean, even just at the start of 2020, Foo Fighters shelved Medicine at Midnight and dropped it almost a full year later. And like, how much of that changed? And how much of your and Every Time I Die, we talked about them a couple weeks ago. Same thing, right? Like music that was mostly done. I don't know how much they changed in between having it ready to go in early 2020 to shelving it till when it dropped. But that worries me a little bit. But the other piece there is like it's the only way they're going to make any money. And outdoors, the more we know about it, the less we're worried about it outdoors. I mean, we were at some pretty big outdoor shows this summer that didn't seem to be any sort of issue. So I'm optimistic that we see a fairly normal outdoor touring cycle this summer.
Yeah. If there's the space, there should be no reason why it can't happen outside. If there's space and you're willing to go and the band's willing to be there.
I think you both have valid points. What Tone highlighted is what I'm seeing out here on the West Coast. And I think that is an extra variable as I'm in a climate that is conducive to outdoor shows 12 months out of the year, right? So there's never really any reason to shut down. Their shows are out here all the time. December, January of the year has no hinder on live shows whatsoever. So
Hinder's not going to play your hometown? Come on, I want to see Hinder.
Was it Lips of an Angel?
Lips of an Angel, baby. It's a great stripper song. Sorry, go ahead, Nate.
Creed Light.
No,
Creed
but
Light.
Anyways, to get back on the tracks, I think that is kind of the luxury of living in this market is seeing a little bit of the future because it is very prominent here with the music industry in Southern California. So you kind of see things roll out beta here. So Pearl Jam, for instance, that I have the whole 6 shows lined up. I have tickets that have been postponed for 2 years.
This is amazing because we talked about Pearl Jam episode 3.
Oh yeah,
when Gigaton came out, and Nate had tickets to all that stuff then, and it's still. Yeah. I mean, we're into 2022 now, and you still have them. They haven't happened. It's fucking wild.
Has the value gone up?
I don't know. That's a good point. But well, actually, no, they're fan-to-fan tickets, so I can't even resell them at a premium, even if I wanted to. Not that I want to do that, but I think that might be my cheat code. Is I get the insight from the Pearl Jam management, which is extremely diligent on doing the right thing, and the tour was announced to be rescheduled for May 2022. So that's kind of where I'm leaning is like, all right, late spring into summer is based on Pearl Jam's management, which is they're not going to take any risks. They own their own touring. They own essentially their own business with the exception of, the distribution and venues, Live Nation. So that's kind of the clue, along with Coachella being rescheduled and ready to go off in April and a bunch of other things. So I get both points, but I think, we're looking at a slowdown come January of this, where we're at now, going into like March, and then a big opening April, or a light opening April, and full swing July going forward, just based on these little clues.
You have Pearl Jam's management, man. Like, why haven't we gotten one of those guys yet? It's time. Stoney, what are you doing, bro?
It's 2022. The time has come. Nate's been waiting for a show from you guys for 3 years. Although you did see Eddie,
Yeah.
but make it happen. The time is now. All right, I'm going to dig my heels in here and give one of my predictions, which kind of backs what I said earlier, which I think is we're going to take a step back. My angle here is the non-full-time bands are going to take a step back. And let's look at Thursday, for example. These are guys, which I'm making an assumption, have full-time jobs, have families, who have to plan for this. And there, it looks like the writing's on the wall that they just canceled a couple shows. People in the band got COVID. They are doing a live stream to basically recoup the funds for canceled flights and everything. These are bands, and I'm not singling them out. I'm just using them as an example of bands that are not at this 100%. They have full-time gigs. They have to plan time off. So there's going to be limited bands that are going to even be willing to be out there. I mean, Thursday, after what happened recently, who knows if these other shows are going to happen, but do you think they're going to be eager to book a summer tour? No, that's a lot of planning. It's a lot of risk, where bands that are full-time, yeah, that they're willing to take that risk because there's not, it gets canceled and then they sell NFTs or something. I think there's just too much planning and coordination that a lot of these bands can't pivot on a dime. And the counter to that is, well, there's a shitload of bands. Like, they'll be able to fill places. But I think there'll be that tier that just not willing to take that risk.
Yeah, you're right. That tier is constantly shrinking because of the pandemic and all that stuff. But I mean, if they've got full-time jobs and if they want to do a, 3-month or even 6-week tour down the road, they can go back to their jobs and come back to that when they feel like coming back to that. As long as they stay dedicated to that piece of it, they can still do it. It just may not happen right now. So I'm gonna dig my heels in and say, well, maybe we see in April.
What, you think they'll play in April?
Yeah, maybe they go April to June, or maybe they go June to August. Who knows?
Yeah. Using that band as an example, I don't know what they do, outside of
right. No, I mean,
music. And maybe
we're speculating. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I hope for them they can go back to a gig. They're able to pivot. But
Yeah, it's a good thing to highlight in terms of the separation on full-time and non-full-time, because when you're full-time and you're in the system, give it Live Nation, Ticketmaster, a lot of those things at that level are paid out advances years in advance. So you're talking like you've already been paid for the show. You haven't even played yet. Kind of what we were talking about on the small time gigs that I was working with back in the day. But so small time or non-full time, I feel like I need a little more insight to make a better estimate on, how that works. But it seems like if it's not full time and you have another full-time job and you can kind of go back to your legacy work kind of whenever you want, it's a different kind of luxury, but it is also based on bandwidth. Are you a teacher? So you have summers off, so you can book a summer tour and that's about it. Something like that. So I see where your head's at.
yeah, it also depends like what Brian and Shadows Fall did. Like that's one day, they had still a lot of planning, flights involved.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little more doable. A tour, like Thursday's tour, I don't know how many dates it is, but it's probably 2025. Like that's a commitment. So I don't know. I hope you guys are right for the sake of everyone. Obviously, if people are out there playing shows, we're in a better state with all this stuff. And for the sake of the bands, they're out there, making money, which means they can come back again. We'll see what happens.
It's a fine line, right? I mean, we're all worried. I know the three of us are worried about people not going to things and getting sick and having dire consequences because of that. And I know a lot of the band members we've talked to have said the same thing. Like, we don't want to be that. We don't want to be the congregation that gets sick and everybody is, you have bad consequences from gathering people together, even if it's for a positive reason, like going to a concert, which the three of us love, and many other people do. So it's a fine line, but for some people, it's their livelihood. Like, that's where it becomes difficult. I know we've talked to a handful of bands that if they don't play those shows or they don't sell that merch, then they're not going to, they're going to have a harder time putting food on the table. And we don't want that. Like, we definitely want them to be able to get out there.
With their parents at that point.
Right, which is not ideal. I mean, especially if you've been doing it since you were a kid and that's your skill and you're good at it. And you want to be out there in front of people because it's something that you excel at. But nobody had 2.5 year pandemic in the mix. So it's tough, man. We want all of it to be gone, obviously, but I'm hoping that we get through this winter and things become, we know more about it. We can treat it a little differently, and new ideas come forth that help us to get there.
Get me to the show. Get me to the show. Tone, what you got?
What I really want to give you guys is the Four Seasons Weezer album idea, but did you guys see that?
No.
So Weezer has speculated 4 albums next year: the SZN season, spring, summer, fall, and winter. And I just thought it was funny, and that we needed to talk about it for a second, because like we all have our moments with Weezer, I think. And I think the music fandom as a whole does, right? I mean, everybody has an opinion, and they kind of keep their name on your lips, right? They find a way to weasel their way into conversation. They're doing it right now, by no fault of their own. I'm excited about this, but not at the same time, because like I can't imagine that many songs are going to be great. Right. Are they like four song EPs? Are they? Admittedly, I didn't do a ton of research, but I just saw this pop up when I was looking at things that were coming out this year, and thought to myself, I don't have high hopes for this, but I want to, because I do like them. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, it's them. I think at this point, it's half troll on their part, half just a hobby. And not in that it's obviously a full-time thing for them, I assume. But it works. We're talking about it. And actually, remember last week, or no, 2 weeks ago, when I was talking about the Teenage Wrist album, and I was like, there's a song that really sounds like a band I can't pinpoint for the 90s. It's Weezer. So they're, by doing, again, nothing on their own, I would have been talking about them had I made the connection 2 weeks ago, because a band is jacking their steez. And then there's Rivers, who just is, I can't even say it with a straight face. He's just Rivers. And with
Rivers
that name,
Rivers.
It's them. This will probably happen, I guess, is the punchline. I bet this will happen. And I love the name. How can you not love that fucking name, Season?
I hate it, but and that's an inside joke going way back from Twan and I. So,
and this just brought up a whole entire episode case study on a band and how you operate, because it's one of the few bands that I can think of top of mind that there's a great Neil Young quote from one of his songs, like, it's better to burn out than fade away. Well, Weezer is definitely not fading away. They just keep going, right? And a lot of it is confusing. Like you said, is it a troll? They're putting out albums for the sake of putting out albums, and a lot of them are jokes, and there's some corny album covers that are out there forever. Like, do they represent the band in their truest form? I don't think so. If you have things like the Blue Album, which is a bona fide staple for the music industry. So it's a very interesting way to continue your career, because they could just tour, they could just be a legacy act off the Blue Album and call it a day, but they continue to put out albums. And I just don't understand if it's just to be top of mind, or if it really is, there's creative juices always going on, that the band is like, yeah, let's put another record every quarter. Let's put out a record. It's like, it's very strange. I don't think any other band does it at this cadence.
Well, they put out 2 records last year, right? OK Human and
Van Weezer.
Van Weezer. And I liked some of OK Human. I liked some of Van Weezer. It's almost like put them together. Like, maybe hone some of these down and make them one record that is awesome. The idea behind OK Human was with an orchestra, so I get that too. But I don't know. You're right. It's like they're constantly wanting to be top of mind, and you're the better to burn out than fade away. They've kind of done both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, at least musically, I think they've sort of burned out in spots and sort of faded away, but at the same time, they're still going. And like, they're still putting out songs that don't suck, because I've liked some of the songs that have come out in the last 10 years. I don't love them. They're not Blue Album for me. And it's funny you said Blue Album, Nate, and didn't say Pinkerton. We talked about Pinkerton way back. I don't even remember. It must have been in the 40s or 50s. And you guys both rode for it. And I think there are 2 really good Weezer songs on it, but it's disjointed. And I'm a Blue Album truther. So funny you didn't mention Pinkerton.
Maybe he's changed his mind.
Maybe.
Weezer's like the 38-year-old NBA veteran that had a couple good seasons that everyone's just willing to take a flyer on. You know, they're not gonna. They're signed out of desperation. No one's going to.
So you're saying they're Joe Johnson?
They're Joe
Celtics,
Johnson.
All you Celtics heads out there.
They're not going out of their way to sign the guy. Like, he He had a good season in the G League or the whatever
The big three.
The big three. Whatever the big three. And you know, and maybe that's Weezer. They had a good, 3-song stretch off, I don't know, name Hurley, who knows? And that's enough for everyone to be like, all right, well, maybe they still got it. But now they're 50 and they're pumping out season,
Yep. 4 of them.
Oh, good shit.
Had to bring that one up. All right, Nate, what do you got, man?
Well, that got my mind spinning in a lot of different ways because that is one way to do it. Just keep on, putting out albums, whether you mean it or you don't. It's definitely not trying to fulfill any kind of album contract. They're just putting it out for the sake of putting it out. And they don't need the tour support because they're legacies. There's no real dependence on putting out albums at that rate. But it is what it is. Like I said, Weezer is its own case study. But every other band in the universe of nerdery has a different play. And I feel like this is going to catch on big in 2022. We've been kind of watching it unfold over time. I've been very attuned to it since I'm not going to say since it began, but I collect it, so alcohol and music type collaborations is one. What I'm really alluding to is licensing. And I think we've talked about it on here quite a bit. I dropped the term licensee quite a bit throughout this podcast legacy. And it's something that's becoming more apparent as we are looking at different tangible items and or just being stuck at home and watching Netflix and seeing music that you recognize or a poster on the wall in the back, which is like product placement type style. I think this is going to continue to be pumping up more and more. So alcohol's one, music and bands kind of collaborating on whether it be limited releases. Deftones does one out here. I'm drinking one right now. We had Brian Fair, Shadows Fall. Even if it's small, it's localized, it moves units. And if you like music and you like alcohol, there's no reason why that will not sell. So there's that. Commercials, like I said, product placement, just selling your music in any way possible. If you own your music, we had Spose on here, you can kind of do whatever you want with it, right? So putting it in movies, games, sports, commercials. Like I said earlier, Netflix is just so dialed in right now with everyone's attention. So I feel like this opportunity has always been there, but it's never been fully capitalized on. I'm not really sure why. I think there was probably a sellout mantra for a while, like, if you do that, you're a sellout. Well, now it doesn't fucking matter because if you own your own music, this is how you make a living. And if I was an artist, I would be doing it too. So
I agree. I think there's a paradigm shift in that depending on what you do, it is not viewed as a money grab. There's other things that you might do, which again, I'm going to tease my next anticipation here, that are definitely money grabs, and that's what it is, and that's when it gets a little dicey. But yeah, this is the play, especially with the internet. I mean, there's so many avenues you can go down where you just slap your image on, you slap your logo, like the Deftones White Pony, slap that on anything, and it's going to sell.
Yep. Weed, tequila, beer,
and people love booze. Yep. Booze isn't going anywhere. None of that's going anywhere. Now's the time.
No, you're absolutely right. There are unexplored avenues of this too. That there's something that we don't even. NFTs are things we talked about, but there are other things that could be product placement that we haven't even thought of that we're going to start seeing. It makes me think of that scene in I Love You Man where the real estate agent's trying to get Paul Rudd's character to like put his name on a urinal cake or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So you're like, just be everywhere, be top of mind, be similar to what Weezer's done, be out in the in the world and seen at every turn, which depending on the situation can be annoying and the artist can be annoying, but it can also be a way for some of these bands that we talked about earlier, the middle of the road bands, to kind of keep viable. Merch too, like t-shirts. Why we haven't seen more of that? We are seeing it a little bit. People wearing them in different aspects of the world, hats, t-shirts, stuff like that, or having a cool poster on the wall in a dorm room in a movie, right? Like we need more of that stuff, and we want that to be a little more prominently involved to get those, middle of the road bands seen and on top of mind. So, oh man, that's a cool Thursday poster. I'm gonna go listen to that record again. I forgot all about it. Or, hey, these guys just talked to Tucker Rule of Thursday. I'm gonna go listen to Full Collapse because I haven't in 15 years, whatever. So that type of thing could happen more and more. I mean, even people like us being a mouthpiece for stuff like that.
Well, you remember when Coca-Cola put the names on all the labels, and people like would seek out their names. Like, why wouldn't, I don't know, any record label just like band together all their acts and just throw them on? You know, like if I was at a checkout and there's like a Mountain Dew or a Coke with I don't know, Deftones or whatever, I'm gonna grab the Deftones one. I am, and it works. They have their own thing going with the booze, but there's other avenues. I'm with you.
McDonald's meals, like the J Balvin meal and the Travis Scott meal.
That's a great example. Shit like that.
That's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the world is open, right, for any kind of potential partnership. And a big proponent to this conclusion is the fact that a lot of people are selling their rights to their music. I think the most recent one I saw recently was Bruce Springsteen selling his rights to his catalog. So it just kind of plays into that conclusion, like, okay, like Bruce Springsteen selling his rights to his music, that's something I never would have bet on ever in my life. But now it's 2020 or 2022, and what does selling the rights to your music actually mean? Well, it definitely means more revenue than touring if you can't tour. So, not to take away from my other tangent earlier, but you know what I'm saying? Like, selling your rights and the licensee play is just infinite. You can kind of do whatever the hell you want. So
that's a good point. I mean, artists selling their full catalog, it's wild. And Bruce being the most recent example that we saw, I was surprised by that. But at the same time, like he's in his 70s, right? Or 71 or 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Why not sell the catalog? What the hell do you need it for in perpetuity if you're no longer around? Like, sell it and give the money to your kids, you know, or whatever, right? Or set up a trust and have it work for you a little more than just random royalties coming in for, you know, Jeep commercials, if that's what it gets used for.
I mean, there was something to say with owning your own music was pretty, I don't know, it was holy grail for a while, right? It was like, oh, you own your own rights to your music. That's huge. But at the end of the day, if it's just a gold bar sitting in a bank and you're not cashing in on it, it's not like it's adding. I mean, it might be accumulating value to an extent, but for the most part, it's just sitting there.
It's unrealized. So, you know, at some point it becomes a burden. If it's unrealized, it's just something that you're thinking about, or you're paying for it to be protected, or, you know what I mean? You have a safety, you know, deposit box, or you have a safe or whatever. At some point it becomes a burden.
Yes. But if you're like 35 and you've put out 20 years of music and have a decent back catalog that is still in some sort of demand for whatever reason, or maybe even 50, and you've got a long way ahead of you and you're going to tour still and all that stuff, it pays to hang on to it for a little while longer.
Agreed.
But if you're, you know, like the Boss and Bob Dylan did it last year too, I think. If you're their age, it's a little different.
So this is like 2 in a row where it's like a perfect segue, and I'll give my actually, this is the last one I had. I only had 3. And this isn't a hot take. This is just, obviously, this is where the puck's going. 2022, music NFTs are going to rule the world, and I think it's not for the best, and it's for 2 reasons. One is, if an artist goes like the super exclusive route, you know, small amount gets made, that means only a certain few fans are going to get them. So they're pissed off. So if I'm a fan, there's an NFT I want, I don't get it, I'm pissed. And then I'm pissed again when I go to buy it from the resale market and it's jacked up, right? And I know what you're thinking. This is what vinyl is, right? This is what vinyl is. This is pressing.
Totally. Yep.
But the variable here, which would add fans to be extra pissed, is with NFTs, you can set up a royalty structure. And I know this because I bought a music NFT today. I bought Our Lady Peace of Spiritual Machines 2. And how it works is you buy the NFT. Every change of hand, they get 10%. So if I bought it for $50, just say, and I sold it for $100, they would get $10 off that $100. So imagine like that in the vinyl world. Every time on Discogs, vinyl changes hands, the band gets it back. So you can see how a fan would think this is a money grab sitch, right? So that's on if they're exclusive side. On the flip side, if these NFTs are mass produced, obviously the value is diluted. So as a fan, I might not see the value. And again, not everyone's looking at it from a value perspective. Some of them just want an album, you know, or they just want the artwork. But I don't think I struggle to find the middle ground where the artist wins and not pissing off everyone. And I say that from experience because if you look on Twitter, Our Lady Peace, a lot of pissed off fans. You know, their payment wasn't accepted. There were certain states where this website wouldn't accept payment from. It was just kind of a botched rollout.
Well, and there's going to be growing pains with the NFT stuff anyway, because it's all fairly new as far as being in the music space. The crypto world in general has blown up in the last 18 months, 3 years, but you know what I mean? It's been really big over the last year and a half. And I'm kind of with you. I'm a little concerned as to how this fleshes itself out and works so that people can still listen to the art, because the art has always been kind of able to be gotten depending on how you get it. But it's funny. Nate, you mentioned Spose. He's been doing like a Twitter morning show that I popped into a couple times, and they were talking about NFTs one morning, and I came in like halfway through, and they were like, "Oh, you talk about music. Like, I got a question for you. What do you think a song is worth?" And I was like, "Shit, man, it really depends, right? Like, it could be worth $100 to me, and I want to listen to it, 100 times. But it could be worth, it's a song that maybe I don't like as much. I don't pay $100 for that, and you don't know that going into it either. Like, we don't know if that Our Lady Peace record is going to be any good,
right?
You know what I mean? So it's a fine line to walk, especially with the way the industry has gone. I like the idea of the artists getting a cut every time their stuff's passed around a little more, especially for a smaller artist. I don't like it for a big one, but it's an interesting thing, and it's going to become bumpy here, I think, over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Well said. I'm a little divided on the whole situation altogether because we're in that generation of the changeover to this whole new dynamic in terms of collectibles, right? We're very much so vinyl collectors, posters, tapes, CDs, guitar picks, whatever it is. It's always like an actual physical item. So going digital, like we were part of that generation that transformed into recording a song on the radio onto a tape in your boombox, to downloading on Napster, to streaming on Spotify. Like, we've seen it, we're in the middle of it. So I feel like I'm getting pulled in two different directions. Like, I like the old school element, but I'm very much so on board with the new element. A good example is, I wear an iWatch or smartwatch, right? But I also have like a hemp fucking bracelet on the same arm. So it's like, I'm right in the middle. Like, I don't really know what the fuck's going on. I embrace the future, but I'm clinging on to the past. And NFTs is just the antithesis of that. Like, where do I stand? I don't know. I think NFTs are interesting.
You're in the present tense. That's where you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to echo that, and I'm going to expose myself straight up. I don't even know what I got with the Our Lady Peace NFT. Like, I know I got like the actual album artwork in digital form. There was also mention of like a curated video they're going to make for me. There was also mention of a signed physical item, and I don't know. I was just like, I'm gonna do it for the pod. I'm gonna buy it for the pod. Why not?
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's semi exciting because whenever you give creatives a new place to play, fun things happen. So
totally.
Yeah.
I do think there's going to be some cool stuff that comes to this. I just don't know when or how long it's going to take. Like, if there's going to be a lot of crap in there to begin with, or like to get this thing rolling, because there is. I mean, there's always going to be imitators. There's always going to be more people that want to try to, jump in on the craze and make a quick buck too. Like, all that stuff comes with it. So it's exciting and semi-dangerous at the same time, right? Like, I'm kind of feet firmly on either side of the fence or either side of the line.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be interesting to see, like, at the end of this year, how many I own, how many I've bought or sold. For ones that I'm holding, what's the value to me, all that fun stuff. So we'll check back in 12 months.
I know I'll probably buy one too, and I've been semi anti in it and the thought of it for a while, but I mean, if it's the way it's going, it's the way it's going. Like, I gotta get up and go with it, or be left behind and be mad at myself for being left behind.
Yeah, you missed the bus. Just get back on, man.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tony, you're up.
All right, so I'm gonna give you. I have a thought, but I'm gonna give you a couple of just a couple more albums that are coming out this year because we're kind of excited about them. Frank Turner's putting an album out in early February called FTHC. Eddie Vedder's got an album out in early February called Earthling. The Gang of Youths have an album coming out, which I'm excited about, called Angel in Real Time. Drink. That's the only reason I wanted to tell you that, because of
Cheers.
In Real Time. Posthumous Fife Dog Records coming out then, late March. Obviously, the 4 Weezer albums we just talked about. Maybe new Kendrick Lamar. Maybe Red Hot Chili Peppers finally. That stuff is kind of exciting. What I wanted to get to, and looking for some of these things that were coming out this coming year, I noticed more Bandicaps, and I had to share a couple with you. And I think 2022 might be the year of the Bandicap. I think we're going to continue to talk about it. It's going to become a phrase that we start to hear places and we'll be like, hey, that was ours. Like, we've been saying it for a year and a half now.
Yeah.
But I think it's a thing, right? So there's a band that's putting an album out called
it's Bootylicious Zebrahead before Destiny's Child swiped it. Right?
Yeah, right. It's just going to be out there. So a couple bands that I saw today in my travels. Wet Leg.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait, is this a Hard Times article?
No. And I heard a song by them and I didn't hate it, but I was like, that's such a bad band name. I don't even know what it means. I don't know where it came from. I'm not even done a ton of research on this. Just first thing you think of when you hear Wet Leg, weird band name.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
How about Let's Eat Grandma?
That's another one?
What?
Yeah. Yep.
Damn.
They have an album coming out that's anticipated in 2022 as well. So that being said, the year of the Bandicap, you heard it here first, because you did hear it here first, way back in the teens on this podcast. We came up with it. And if that thing takes off, if you're using that in your everyday vernacular in September, it came from us.
I love it because, I mean, let's think about this. As time goes by, naturally, it's going to be harder and harder to come up with good band names. But at the same front, don't let it, do a disservice to your music. I'm going to put my Nate hat on and talk about merchandise, Am I going to wear a Wet Leg t-shirt? Fuck no. Are you going to? Who's going to wear? I mean, do they have sweatpants that say Wet Leg down the leg? I mean, what the fuck?
Do the shirts say Wet Arm? Like, I'm confused.
I mean, I can only assume they're an indie act a la, the Pitchfork crowd. And that's just based on the name. And that's a prime example why maybe you don't do that. But maybe they're great. I'm not going to jump to conclusions.
The name's tough.
The name's tough.
Yeah, it's a tough hang. Yeah, don't knock the hustle.
Let's Eat Grandma? Like,
what it does remind me of is just fashion trends where cornier, uglier, throwback, it all comes into focus. Just go on Instagram, right? Or TikTok for that matter, and just look at what people are wearing. It's like almost like the uglier shit that you wear gets more attention, almost based on that kind of, satire of, oh yeah, I'm wearing an ugly sweater for Christmas. Oh, cool. Yeah, you're invited to this party now. Like it's cool to be ugly or uncool. And so I guess band name kind of plays into that same realm, which is like, oh yeah, it's a shitty band name. I'll go check it out.
Right. Or like it's intrigued you enough to listen to it. And maybe that's what they're going for a little bit. I mean, I heard it on another podcast that I listen to occasionally that does like an end of the year songs they liked from 2021 type deal. And I sometimes like them, I sometimes don't, but it's always fun to like hear something that you're not used to listening to. And that's what I did. And I had this written down already. And then they mentioned it and played a song, and I was like, Nerdvoyance, perfect. All right, that's 2023's word of the year. But it's a thing, man. And like, I don't get it, but at the same time, I kind of do, because it does bring some attention to you as like, oh, if you check that band out, yeah, they have a weird name, but like that's why I checked them out, and they're actually not bad. So who knows? Might work, but Bandicap gonna be a thing.
All right, few things before Nate jumps in here. I'm looking at their Spotify. 1.1 million monthly listeners, so they're huge.
Wow.
They have a single called Wet Dream. So, have you heard that new song by Wet Leg called Wet Dream? So then, let's take it a step further. And this plays into exactly what you're talking about, Tone. Fans also like, these are real band names, Sports Team, Yard Act, Dry Cleaning, Porridge Radio, Goat Girl, Do Nothing, New Dad, Geese. So Goose was taken. So you go Geese.
Is Goose just more people from the band Goose than now they're Geese?
Yeah.
Wow. And again,
band.
I don't know the music. Obviously, they're huge. Kudos to them. It's working.
Yeah. Sometimes we do date ourselves. We're like, oh, we're not cool. We don't know what's going on.
They're like Patio Slave. What kind of name is that?
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of a joke that we used to have before the podcast happened, where we'd see like bills announced at different places, and we'd be like, this can't be real. None of these band names make any sense. None of these bands exist. This is all, we're living in a simulation. This isn't real.
Who the fuck is Shovels and Rope?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so generational too. It's like, imagine like being like an 80-year-old in like 1992 and being like Soundgarden. That's a
great
name.
point.
Now it's legendary.
Pearl Jam. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what? Oh man, Bandicap, year 2022. I think that's a good one. I like that. For mine, here's another one. Kind of going back to what you were saying, Tuan, earlier. My third little bullet point here is big on, I'm going to drop some terminology here, D2C, which is direct to consumer. This is happening across all sectors. Been watching this very carefully, especially in the wine and spirits industry. There's a big paradigm shift. Drink, you said it earlier, Tuan, that direct to consumer is starting to take over in all segments, all sectors. Things I never thought I would ever see. Cannabis, direct to consumer. You order it on your phone, it's delivered to your house. Alcohol. These are all very highly regulated industries. Alcohol. Bevmo is big out here. Total Wine. These big Walmart, Target type liquor stores are delivering to your door. So you can get a bottle of bourbon delivered to you. These are phenomenons that were somewhat taking form, but during pandemic were very much proof of concept. So if that can happen with highly regulated industries such as cannabis and alcohol, which I only bring those up because I've seen it as it's my profession come to fruition, I see that this is just trending forward. And you said NFTs earlier, and that's a good example of proof of concept in the music industry, but it continues, right? You got Cameo. I kind of put that down as a note as like the beta. But even before that, when you did meet and greets, you have the meet and greets or you have the ticket purchase, and then you got VIP upgrade. That's another kind of direct to consumer upgrade. It's not through Ticketmaster. This is all in-house. It's going directly to the band. Limited items, whether it be vinyl, t-shirt. I mean, I did shows recently where you just get a laminate for the meet and greet, but it's another collectible. Looks like a backstage pass. It's not really a backstage pass. I feel like this trend is only going to continue. And we've seen it across the board. But, Cameo is really the tipping point where it's, hey, I'm not doing anything. If people want to pay me, I can jump on for 5 seconds and say happy birthday. I feel like that is not going anywhere, and it's only going to compound from here. I think 2022 is going to see a lot of this in different areas and extending all the way to the tour. Like, you want to meet the band? Pay an extra $5,000. We'll get you backstage. Now it's no longer who do you know? Now it's just how much are you willing to pay?
Can I pay enough in the pre-order to have Flea just hand deliver me the new Red Hot Chili Peppers vinyl? Because I'd do that.
Potentially.
I'd make him fly out here. I'd tell him he'd have to wear a Celtics jersey. I'd go all in.
I'm sensing a theme with a lot of what we're anticipating, which is musicians going to take more power, the musician themselves. And it's all about getting the money. It's all about, all the revenue that they were either missing out on or what they think they're worth, right? So it's, like I said, it's the Wall Street bets uprising. It's, Nate, you said it's the wine and spirits, it's the NFTs, it's direct to consumer. That all plays into the same exact theme. And it's been going around for a while. Like, meet and greet's been going on for a while. But now there's tiers of meet and greets, right? It's, hey, you pay up, you can go sound check. You pay up, you get a photo, all this stuff. And we're getting, and we talked about this weeks and weeks ago, but we're getting close to where a band just needs their own management. They don't even need a label, just toss it up on the platforms. They can, outsource the vinyl. I mean, does Atlantic Records mean anything to Gen Z or whoever? No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean anything. They don't give a shit. They just hit play on Spotify. It means nothing. I mean, even Def Jam, it means something to us. Like, we knew that era. Nowadays, is Jay-Z involved with that? They have no idea.
No, I think you're right. I think it is kind of an overarching theme of all of this, that we're going to see more artists taking the power back a little bit. And it's already kind of started, but I think 2022 will accelerate that, especially if we're stuck, for another however many months at home, not able to go to shows. They got to find a way to stay viable, or that industry, many industries like it, are going to collapse, and we can't. I mean, I don't want music to go away. You guys nobody wants the music industry to go away. That needs to continue. So, I mean, we've been talking about it now for 2 years plus, so almost 2 years. So, yeah, good stuff, man.
And one last comment is, I don't think a lot of these label contracts were written in a way that even knew this was coming. Like, I bet when Nick Hexum does a cameo, he's getting that money. And like Jamie Josta of Hatebreed and Vinny Caruana of Movie Life, they're doing handwritten lyric sheets from their IGs for like, Josta was doing for like $100. Handwritten lyrics, sign them to you, $100. I guarantee you there's nothing about that in their contract with whatever label they're on. They're getting that. And that's just a taste. And they want more of that. They want to taste more of it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah, it's intellectual property. It's not a handwritten note, has no association to the label whatsoever. It's actually that's the gray area, right? You're like, oh no, I wrote this on a napkin for a guy sitting next to me at the bar. Like, there's no royalties that need to be paid out. This is not a physical product tied to Atlantic Records. So, good point. And even to kind of rewind back to the whole meet and greet thing, we've all been to meet and greets. If you remember, you have CDs and they drill the barcode. So like, there's no units sold at all. So the band is doing a meet and greet out of good faith. So
I have a few of those drilled CDs myself.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. Or Sharpie, right? There's a Sharpie across the barcode.
Yeah.
Or the hole punch.
Yep. That's a good place to wrap, right?
Yeah.
We are excited for 2022. We hope you are too. We hope things can come back to a little bit more normalcy, maybe in the next few weeks and months, and we'll be back out there seeing shows again and the warm weather and having a good time. But in the meantime, we're gonna talk about it here and have people on that are in it and try to get their perspective on things, because we love doing that too. So thank you all for listening. Check us out at Podioslave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Email us podioslavepodcast@gmail.com. Go to podioslave.com and check out the awesome new website that Juan has put together for us, and all that fun stuff, man. We're everywhere.
Let us know your predictions. We are out on to 22.
Awesome. Thanks, nerds. Let us know where you placed your money on these bets, these Nerd Street bets, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Peace, podheads.